Welcome back. Unfortunately, suicide has become part of the national conversation. That after the deaths by suicide of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade. Now, people focusing more on a problem that frankly was there, and people are also thankfully learning how they can get help. Calls to suicide prevention hotlines, they have surged in the aftermath. And on your screen right now, you can see a number, toll-free number that can be called if someone needs help, and we encourage you to use that if this applies to you. Now, long before the tragedies involving celebrities, it's become a national crisis, and it's a crisis that's only worsening. The CDC says suicide rates are up 25% since just 1999. 45,000 Americans died by suicide in 2016 alone. It is now the 10th leading cause of death. And joining us now to talk about some of the many reasons why, psychiatrist Dr. David Reese. Doctor, thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let's just put the numbers in context before we get into the why. That's a huge uptick in a relatively short period of time, am I right?
Very significant and very worrisome.
To that end, we look at some of the factors, and it's not just mental health as I see it here. Give some of the things that we can find. And one of the things that jumped out, at least to me, Doctor, was women and the percentage of women that take their lives. Still less than men historically. That was a much larger number, but the rate at which women are taking their lives, that's been probably the fastest population growth, tragically.
Yes, I think there are probably a couple of factors that contribute to that. One being that more women are involved in substance abuse and the opiate crisis than going back to the years that were before the study. And also more women are under pressure, having both family and work, and just are dealing with a lot of the pressures that may not have been there in the past.
To that end, Doctor, there was a story recently. It didn't get a lot of press given all the craziness in the news cycle lately, but just how many people are living right on that edge of the poverty line. If the car breaks down, if somebody gets sick, the hours get cut at work, that safety net gets completely frayed, and then they're in that bottom part of the economic earners. There has been a cumulative effect of that stress that's put on people here, that day-to-day grind of what if.
Absolutely, and actually I see that in my own practice where I work with a workers' comp system, and you see women who have come in who either have lost their jobs or have had injuries on their jobs, and the disability payments don't cover what they used to, and it's basically one or two checks and you can't pay your rent.
How does social media play into this conversation?
There's a good and a bad to it. Obviously, people can get support over social media, but there's a very negative side also in that people who are considering suicide, one, can be bullied or pressured, and also there are actually some very negative sites which encourage people or give people information how to do it.
You mentioned that you deal with patients that are in that economic reality, but one of the things I've learned, I know you live this life, you know it far better than I, but the lack of resources, or certainly long-term resources, for people that are suffering from real mental illness, and also, as you mentioned now, the twofer when you add in also substance abuse that only contributes to it. People can have 2 weeks, a month max if they're even lucky. Talk about what people at home don't realize, just how scarce some of these resources that are so desperately needed are.
It's really difficult to get someone into an outpatient treatment program. Is very difficult, even to get someone in to see a doctor. Sometimes there can be a 2 or 3 month wait, and both due to the lack of resources and insurance restrictions, sometimes people are only allowed to see someone once every couple weeks.
You know, years ago, Doctor, we did something on this program where there was a spate of suicides for people that were jumping off area bridges. And when we went to some of the authorities and we talked about the problem, more than once I got a reaction of, hey, what can you do? If people want to kill themselves, they're going to do it anyway. You can't really do anything about it. Now, long story short, we advocated, and in many cases got call boxes put on. And to their credit, these same agencies who said, what's the point, they told us that it made a huge difference that right before someone jumped, if they picked up a phone and there was a voice on the other end giving them a reason why they shouldn't do it or just to get the other side of the bridge, almost more often than not, it really saved a life. Are you seeing a change in perception that there's a point in trying to do this maybe different than there was a generation ago?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think so, because you have to look at it that unless someone's, let's say, terminally ill and they're making a decision that may be quote unquote reasonable, basically anyone who's considering suicide is in an irrational state of mind. So any contact they can make, whether it be by a phone box, whether it be from a cell phone, whether it be on social media, any contact they can make with someone who can touch them back into rationality. And I don't mean psychotic, I just mean rational thinking can be life-saving.
What has to happen here so we don't look at another study 10, 15 years from now and we also see another uptick by another 25% on top of the numbers we're already dealing with now, whether it be federal, state, local, or even just general humanity? What has to happen different so we change these numbers, thankfully, hopefully I should say, in the right direction?
Sure. Of course, realistically, I don't think we can do much about the stress that people are under, but what we can do is certainly improve the mental health system, improve access, and just improve knowledge among people, among the population, about how to deal with someone who's suffering from depression, even if they're not acknowledging it or even if they don't show the classical symptoms. Just how to talk to someone to find out where they're at and if they may be hiding a risk that's there.
And we've been flashing that toll-free number, and we suggest strongly, whether it be for yourself or for a loved one or someone you care about that needs to get some help, to reach out and ask. The stigma of depression hopefully is lessening in today's society, and the first and most important step is to ask for help. And Doctor, I appreciate you giving us some of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back on RFL with more. Please stay with us.